we're in the middle of our maintenance right now, and
Okay.
there's been a lot that's come up between just dump trucks that need more work than we were hoping for. Yeah.
Okay, folks, we're going live here, okay? Sorry. So just a quick mic check, Kevin, if you would go around. Check. Check. Thank you, Andy. Dan, you're good. All right. So this is going to be a shorter meeting than our last couple because it's just EDC business, and we're not joint with Downtown TIF Advisory Board. The first order is to call the meeting to order. It is 4:05 on 3/23. There's no approval of the minutes because our last meeting was only last Wednesday, and that'll come at our next joint meeting on the 27th. Just a real quick housekeeping stuff or mentions of a couple items before getting into our main business, which is Jack Clem talking about everything that's happening in West Lebanon. There was an article in the Valley News introducing the new art school that's received conditional approval to go in the core downtown here in Lebanon. They came before Arts and Culture Commission last month, but they were in front of Planning Board, and that was met with success. There's an article in the paper, and also Dan's very good at sharing the New Hampshire Business New Hampshire magazine, where this group was quoted extensively. Chip, myself, Karen. Yeah, I hope so. Okay. Okay. Sure. Could you do me a favor and maybe zap it out to everybody? That would be wonderful. Okay. That would be great. Sean and David were also quoted there, so it's a good read. 5 or 6 pages, completely focused on Lebanon and smart growth. Okay. So moving to new business number 3, Chet has been a guest star on our big screen, and we thought we'd invite him in to tell us all things West Leb and development related, and some of the heavy lifting that was done by the Economic Revitalization Committee in West Leb. So take it away, Chet.
All right. Chet Clem, president of Lime Properties. Sort of here in my dual role, put my developer hat on with River Park and my vice chair of the West Leb Revitalization Committee. And put together some slides that I hope will be a fun overview. And you got to bear in mind, I come from a comedy background, so I'm trying to keep it a little lively on this last Wednesday afternoon before yet another snowfall tomorrow.
Like Zelensky.
Yeah, I try. So having observed a lot of the EDC and TIF over the last year and seeing the recent talk about riverfront parks and trailer-oriented development, obviously something that's interesting and familiar, similar to what we've been trying to advance in West Leb for a long time. I think the intentionally edgy push of today is, why not West Leb? And I think that's the question that was posed a lot last year in the committee, which is we feel like we've had this unbelievable opportunity and a lot of really good studies and efforts, and just needing to figure out how to get to the level of attention and resources and involvement. And I think a lot of it comes from my effort in the past year to try to create a few cohesive documents, boiling that all together. So I'm going to start today with something that was actually brought to my attention by a city councilor who shared this with me, a sort of Facebook flashback photo that appeared, which is that this month is actually the 12-year anniversary of the River Park zoning change. And I remember it clearly because it was also the same week that the first iPad was announced. And I realized that I now have the 9th generation iPad, and I still have a field in West Lebanon. And I think as the news called there, like where we are today comes from admittedly a place of frustration, and you'll hear that from me today. I don't say it to continue any frustration. I don't say it to be more complaints. God knows David Brooks has heard plenty from Lime Properties over the years, and Sean. And I really don't do this to relitigate the past. I do this to try to set a path forward. So please take it all with that in mind. And what I didn't want to do is review all the past stuff, so hopefully everyone had a chance to kind of take a peek at all that. And again, by no means is this our view is the view. I'm just trying to talk about how we fit into the broader context there. I think, with all due respect to Kevin and other members of the committee, there's not a whole lot of new ideas in the action plan, which I actually think is great because it reflects the fact that there's been a lot of study and community input, and it's a matter of putting it into action. I think we have a unique opportunity as the block party in October showed that there's pent-up interest in this. I appreciate the attention that has been paid in the last year and hopefully will be paid this year towards advancing these efforts. The one thing, back to the sort of title of Why Not West Leb, I think there is a palpable frustration. I'm not trying to harp on it, but I do think that it's worthy of addressing because otherwise it risks being dismissive of a level of frustration that I think a lot of people on the committee and folks that we have talked with felt. I'll take impassioned frustration over apathy any day. I think if you're not hearing that, it's a sign that people have checked out and don't care, and that's a big problem. I think when you look at all these plans, I think there's this feeling of we just, and I sort of love this line from the 2008 plan, generally just want to see something happen. And I understand, very cognizant of the inherent challenges that West Leb faces versus downtown Lebanon versus other opportunities, that 40% of the downtown is controlled by the state. They're not necessarily fun to play ball with. They don't pay taxes, and it's sort of an immovable object to a degree. We've got a lot of disparate ownership in small parcels. We don't have that brick and beam downtown that downtown Lebanon, White River Junction, Hanover, and others have. We have sort of that late 19th, early 20th stick frame railroad era. So there's plenty of ways to get to know and understand why we don't have the ability to do some of the big picture economic development. But I think our focus last year became how do we get to action on what we can achieve. And I recognize that I'm a developer, so I see things through that lens. And Barry's not here today, so I can say that developer is probably just one rung above lawyer in terms of most disliked inherent profession. Sorry, Barry, if you're watching at home. I also recognize I'm not a Lebanon resident, and it's been made clear to me by a few that that's an unforgivable sin. But I do come at this through a lens of community conscious creativity and in search of a new way forward, both for West Leb and for what we're trying to do as a part of that. And although I'm not a quantitative person, I understand when things don't add up. And I think we learned last year that the math is bad. Put simply, the math is bad in West Lebanon. So I think if that's not working, if we're stuck, we got to figure out, not the facade easements are great, don't get me wrong, but we have to feel deeper and get into the math on this and understand how do we overcome that. And so I went and looked for places like St. Albans, half the size of Lebanon, basically Canada, and they've put forth a really interesting model downtown, public-private partnership, to try to break that stuck in the mudness and basically facilitate development that puts people back downtown and goes towards that maximizing tax value to the community that we saw in the value per acre analysis from Urban 3 and other presentations. I think that one was back in 2020. I've heard Mill City Park talked about a lot in this room. I've heard it talked about at the state level, certainly in the work that we do in trails. I know it's been floated about the Mascoma River here. My parents aren't here, so I will say that I have gone down the Mascoma River in a rental EMS kayak when I was 17. I'm pretty sure I violated my rental agreement and I'm lucky to have come out alive. So putting aside the can you do it or not, I think the key piece about that example is not the outcome of what they're trying to do with the park, but how they're doing it. I think that is really interesting, and that really informed what I think we set out to do last year and what I'm pushing towards doing in West Lebanon as well. And part of that is, I'm fond of the saying that revitalization is not a single conductor directing the band. It's sort of improvisational jazz where you set a beat and everyone contributes in their way. And if it works, it's beautiful. And if it doesn't, it's a cacophony of misery. But I do believe that, especially given the disparate ownership, especially given the lack of municipal holdings to sort of move forward, this has to be that collaborative effort. We have to find a way to get the private side involved and break what I've started calling basis stasis, which is the existing ownership is predominantly legacy, the tax implication of a sale is preventative, and there is no economic incentive for them to improve. So my pushback on folks who say, oh, it's absentee landowners, no, it's actually people that are operating within their own economic, logical self-interest, given the present state of affairs, with the possible exception of Lime, which tends to overinvest and overimprove things. But I do think we have to figure out how to shake that foundation. And I like the idea of this idea of a lever, that we can really force something to happen. And that's where I think this trail and river access comes into play. It was certainly part of the vision that we bought into with River Park, and we did Bailey Brothers. And given that the river these rivers are why Lebanon is here in the first place, part of the history, it ought to be a big part of the future as well. To address the sort of question that was brought up last meeting and previously, are trails economic development? So my many years ago undergrad background as an environmental policy, environmental economist, looked at river restoration through dam removal as a way to facilitate ecological, economic, and recreational revitalization in communities in Maine. So how you measure that is a question. Up there, we looked at it, tourism dollars, increase in tax values over a 10-year horizon. I recognize that's a double-edged sword with the tax structure, especially in New Hampshire in general, and Lebanon especially. But I think there is a body of knowledge out there that speaks to the value of it. I think the maybe more qualitative than quantitative piece of that is that it facilitates a people-oriented landscape. It really gives everybody access to opportunity and activity. So yes, there's the models like out back here for TIF districts and those models that you tie into the developer, or I'll talk a little bit about how we've tried to approach it at River Park. But I think the general goal here is that you're trying to create something that isn't for tourists. It isn't this idea of Western recreational economy or even the White Mountain economy, where we want to attract people here. These are facilities like the park in Westboro, the trails, and Mescon River Greenway is a great example, that are accessible to all, both Lebanon residents, and become a regional attraction, if not a destination for others. And that level of connectivity, I think, increases that value over time. So we met yesterday to talk about, I think you gave the homework of put it on paper, give us some examples, and we've got some good ones that range from UNH resources to some stuff that I've cherry picked from Houston and out west, not to play the game of, oh, we'll just copycat that, but I think it shows some sort of good, better, best approaches in some ways in which, yes, it can help unlock things like out back or like River Park, but it's also something that's conducive to the success of existing businesses. So things that help Dateline Sports, things that help 4 Aces and Cheryl's, things that maybe push businesses to raise their game a bit if they feel like there is a unintended rising tide happening along the river, that they feel like, oh, well, hey, I can get whatever my version of ROI is out of this. And so it's not just a one project at a time, it's opening that up and access. And it aligns with literally decades of plans in the city. Last week it was brought up about, and I put it in the West Lebanon Action Plan. It was discussed here, talked about it a little bit with Sarah Riley yesterday. But the New Hampshire Shoreline Protection urban exemption, it's not about bypassing the regulation. In many ways, it's redundant with Lebanon's own riverfront piece. It's about enabling action. And I think that comes from two things. One, as a student of environmental history and the New England landscape, this is not a pristine riparian wilderness, especially that riverbank. It's a brownfield, it's got a sewer line through it. There's plenty of photos from the Lebanon Historical Society that show just how manipulated, man-made it has been over time. And so there are areas, I'm a paddler, I'm a fisherman, I've heard there's a great little hatch right off of that. But I think it's about balancing how do we achieve what each study says we want to see happen there, right? And as we, the 04 study, the 10 study, the 20 study, different versions of the same watercolor, how do we get to implementation? And so I think it's ensuring that we create a reasonable path to get there, that yes, balances all that, but doesn't create a thing where perfection is the enemy of good enough. So admittedly, when you talk about putting herbicide-free, extra expensive plants on top of a brownfield, I think we're focusing on the wrong things when we need to be figuring out how do we get to an example for Bridge Street Park, which unlike the rest of Westboro is under city control, which becomes essentially sort of like the example home where you walk people through and say, look, this is what yours could look like. This is what the whole greenway could look like. This is where we can start to show what that is, because I'm a big believer in momentum. And when I do, unplug your ears, I've trespassed a few times down there, taken walking tours through Westboro to walk along the riverfront. People get it once you get down there. You have this palpable sense of, oh my God, we're at the confluence of two rivers. This is an unbelievable resource that we're seemingly so tantalizingly close to achieving access to. But for plenty of past issues and still many real present issues. But if we're not getting what we want, how do we shift to accomplish that? Now, back in the sort of 07 to 09 neighborhood planning process that we did for what became River Park, this is a 08 drawing that we did that show what we're trying to do today. How are we a piece of a larger puzzle? How can we on the private side move quickly and contributorily, if that's a word, towards the vision that predates us? How can we add to it? And how can we try to create not only new economic development, but create tax revenue to pay for achieving some of those things? So we did that in the context of West Leb. Lime was, as an experienced brownfield developer, and let me be very clear, I don't take credit for Lime's work pre-River Park. I've been involved in some way, shape, or form with River Park since 07. I ain't got no right to claim credit for anything that Lime ever did in Kendall Square. That's entirely my father in that era. But they were brought in because they had won an EPA award for brownfield revitalization to look at Westboro yards. And the outcome was what every other outcome has been, which is too contaminated, too extensive, too cost prohibitive, not the market support to do it. And so when you realize that 40% of your downtown is effectively taken off the tax roll, and that the best possible outcome, and not diminishing that possibility that it be a park, there's also this piece of, okay, how do you bring new economic life into 03784? And in some ways, we looked at it and said, well, the Upper Valley, like many areas throughout New England and elsewhere, all of these towns are built around economic drivers on rivers. Used to be the mills, used to be the pulp mills, used to be the timber, all that. What does that look like for the 21st century and before? The outcome of that, and this is where I think it touches a little bit on the model for Outback here, is we wanted to do a project that was significant enough to be a catalyst for change. We did so in a manner that was highly engaging of the neighborhood, and in response, we came up with a play that put the 6-acre waterfront, about a half mile of riverfront, into publicly accessible open space and trail, which, I mean, it's dragged out, but we in 2020, finally officially passed it to a New Hampshire not-for-profit to hold and protect and ensure that access in perpetuity. Now, part of the model here, and I'll talk a little bit about the, I'll jump ahead. In 2015, we held a landscape design competition, inviting 5 firms, creating a jury of experts and stakeholders here locally, public access and input at Kilton Library. But we predicated that on sense of place, identifying the realities of West Lebanon, understanding all that. And just like it was a phased development, a phased implementation of improvements to the landscape. And doing so in a way that was sustainable, both ecologically and economically. My mother's father was the director of Parks and Rec in Tyler, Texas. His famous lesson was creating a park is easy. Sustaining a park is hard. So we wanted to create a model that pulled revenue off of the development to help fund those activities and improvements at River Park in hopes that it would be catalytic to the string of pearls that's been talked about for decades. That's the Kendall Square model. We did that with the rink and the amphitheater and all of those things there. I've included it in projects that I did in Quincy, Mass, and elsewhere, in Casket Beach, et cetera. It's a model I believe in because it's a model that's self-sustaining and is less reliant upon the challenges of grants and doesn't compete with tax revenue in the same way as others. Around January last year, I think it was last year, yeah, set out to sort of reinvigorate that 07 vision and talked with this logo soup of groups in the area, regionally and nationally, who share in this vision, see that opportunity, and have basically asked them first, hey, can you lend me your logo and your Rolodex? Can you lend me your support? Can you tell me that you also want to see this? They all said yes. They then have done different levels. So the Trails Alliance helps us improve trails. The National Park Service has given us capacity to help advance things, certainly at the federal level related to the dam. We've had the Rails to Trails Conservancy gift money towards the West Lebanon Greenway just to give a pot of funds to be used without just indiscriminately. And we've been lucky to receive some support from private side as well. I did that with a specific and timely purpose because I had read Pete Buttigieg's book and followed what he was doing and knew that if his infrastructure plan was to become Biden's infrastructure plan, that we were looking at an unprecedented once-in-a-generation opportunity to look at the reinvestment and revitalization of American downtowns. And so I tried to paddle out to where I thought the wave was building for opportunity. And because we were facing a critical decision point with River Park as well, and I don't believe, we've never once believed, that River Park operates in a vacuum independent of the rest of West Lebanon. We really truly have tried to align it with the path of progress and where we've hoped at the time, still remain hopeful that it will go. I know that after this is the talk of the restarting the listening tour, so I'll jump into a little bit, hopefully with a little humor here, to add a little Seinfeld meme to the mix. I think candor is critical. I welcome the feedback to me too. I'm particular to that Mary Hirsch quote of humor is a rubber-tipped sword. It allows you to make a point without drawing blood. And so I do all that in that vein. We are deeply frustrated and questioning what the future holds. And so I come to the EDC and I will submit some stuff once I can track down the last bit of quotes to Sean in the city to try to find a path forwards. And so that's where we are today. Now, putting my developer hat on, in my little gift here for a second, I applaud the effort to advance economic development in Lebanon that's happening now. I really, truly do, and I credit Sean and David for that new era. We have seen years where that has not been the case. I think we've all seen the challenges of and the repercussions from decades of anti-growth, for lack of a better term, policies, and the resultant tax burdens and housing shortages that have resulted. So admittedly, when I hear talk about RFPs and TIFs and all this for things out back and at the airport and all that, I'm sort of two minds. Intellectually, I appreciate them because they're great, and I think they're necessary tools in the toolbox. Not to cry foul, but I kind of feel left out. And so I just want to be clear from the business listening tour, if you will, or to put my developer hat on. When the city does a TIF at the airport and provides access to privately owned land without a developer contribution, that impacts me. When you chase biotech up there at a lower cost, that impacts me. Kind of cuts me off at the knees. Because I'm out trying to do LEED certified buildings. I'm carrying all my infrastructure and then some, trying to compete while also seeing unbelievable escalations since we drew all this infrastructure and drew all this building now 7 years ago. Not saying you shouldn't do the airport. I do believe it's important. I'm just asking for a level playing field. I think the housing at Mount Support Road, I will remain agnostic. But I think the coordination, the prorated mitigation, all that is smart. That's how it should be. But I carry all my own. I carry the $250,000 payment to the New Hampshire DOT. I carry what a recent estimate says is $900,000 in city stormwater. That's on me. When I try to talk with the New Hampshire DOT to coordinate paving, I get told to redo my traffic studies, even though they were the holdup for 5 to 10 years that have transpired. Last year, I invited myself on your biotech tour. I have to go and talk to people and say, yeah, we're out there. And they say, okay, well, what do you got to offer? Now, we've made progress, but again, I think we're at a moment in time where we have to proactively talk about how River Park succeeds if the city wants it to succeed and how we're working together. Because I don't know, but I'm just tired of talking past each other. We've talked about this before. I know my father's not an easy person. I work with him more than anybody. The most frustrating thing is he's often right, but I know he's difficult. I don't want to relitigate all that. I would like to get on the same side of the table with the city. I don't want to do that stuff anymore. I hope you guys feel the same, and I hope that we can come to some ways to work together productively. I know we're unorthodox. I know we're Texan, for all that word means. I'm going to unpack all that for today. But the frustration comes from feeling like we are in alignment with what certainly the people who voted to support us. I mean, we got 75% of West Leb and more votes than any other ballot referendum since. We've tried to align. We've matched every smart growth, every principle of sustainable community. I'm out there doing dog and pony shows for anyone and everyone who can for the Greenway. And just pushing the message, pushing the opportunity. I mean, you look at downtown Lebanon growth, you look at what's transpired in White River Junction in the past 15 years. Why not West Leb? There's no reason, you zoom out, there is no reason that our 14,000 car a day stretch, the only main street in Lebanon, needs to be stuck in a time capsule we're not proud of. Someone who shall remain nameless, and I hesitate to say this, but I'll say it, And I will preface it by saying that this is reflective of not today, this is reflective of the past, and it's a hatchet I'm trying to bury. The quote that has stuck with me is that someone said to me, the way the city hall has treated River Park in the past, it's like you were trying to put in a strip club. It feels like, whether it's unintentional indifference or what, that it just feels like at every turn, despite trying to align, trying to experiment, trying to invest, I'm just hitting roadblocks. And so that doesn't align with sort of the reality where we need to be. I don't want to get into what's transpired. I do want to be on the same page about it because, as I said, I believe in cards up on the table about all this. You want to read through all this, it's on the website. We're at a critical decision point.
Could I just jump in really,
Please, absolutely.
real quickly? So one of the reasons that I invited you to the meeting is because you have been attending EDC, and I'm relatively new at this, right?
Totally.
I've been a banker in town forever and a day, and I hear the contributions and I hear what you're trying to do. And I'm thinking, I haven't heard anything offensive or bad yet from my ears. So I can see the frustration. I can see the vision, and maybe at some point we can chat offline about what the roadblocks have been, and then we can try to resolve some of those. But I get the momentum piece because I can see what you've done, and I can see that, or we can all see the attention that you put onto River Park, and now with the Westboro Yard cleanup as a potential and the recent success of the Mascoma River Greenway and the opening of the tunnel. And in a lot of ways, that has kind of shaped conversations that we've just recently had with TIF about what we could do out back. And it was only until we chatted about, I'm rehashing, but we chatted about housing, we chatted about mixed use, we chatted about parking structures, we chatted about Greenway recreation, cultural, and that is the only one that received zero pushback, which might be the equivalent of your 75% vote or 85% vote, whatever the number happened to be. Yep. So we invited you in to hear some of the concepts. I don't know the history. I'd love to know it off record at some point.
Oh yeah,
because I think there potentially were from where you're sitting, there definitely were roadblocks, and I don't have to rehash that, and I have no desire to relitigate that either. But I think I sense a movement forward in a certain direction. I heard it from the community. You know, we've had the most audience we've had in this room is when there's a visual around our meeting that looks like a building on a riverfront or a parking lot on a riverfront. That'll fill the room, right? When all of a sudden it's conversations about green space, greenway, public entity, so to speak, or public amenity, if better word, there are smiles there, right? So I think we probably do have some alignment, at least while I'm in the chair. Yep. So I'd like to explore that further. Quite frankly, I've had conversations off record with, I haven't heard the guy say anything that I disagree with or that sounds offensive. So what's the holdup?
No, I'm, again, let's lay it all out there. I do think shared knowledge is important. I think it's critical that we inform it. And again, I'm on the first generation River Park plan and the 9th generation iPad, right? So the reality here is that I have to unpack a lot of this stuff, and I'm just laying all out there of what informs our decision-making. Not trying to kick a hornet's nest, not trying to pull the scab off, just trying to talk about what informs where we are today. Because I think the reality is we're facing this 4th mobilization, right? And I like big numbers, right? The pipe that I still don't have all of, but have tracked down to get going this summer is 86% more expensive than it was in March of 2020. When we talk about again, the context of, I believe that budget reflects priority. And so when we talked at length last year in the committee about all of these efforts for West Lebanon, there's $450,000 allocated to West Lebanon right now. Now, we've got another budget cycle. I'm aware of all that. I don't want to represent anyone else's frustration. I just want to put a number on it where we're saying, because I realized this in re-underwriting everything this week. Last week, with the sale of our last home site on Crafts Avenue Extension, we have paid $450,000 in taxes to the city of Lebanon. So what I'm asking is that we are prioritizing efforts on that side of town, because if I feel that way, then I understand why other people feel frustrated that they're not seeing that activity and change happening downtown. But that's the point of all that. And what I'm really asking for is just bring me up to date on where things are in Lebanon today with, as you said, what's been informed in the new experiments. How do we get back to the level playing field, right? The uphill battle, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I've been in and out of it. It's ruined Thanksgiving conversations. It's been there over our head for way too long. I'm saying this to not talk about it anymore. I'm saying this to just say, can we level the playing field? Can we get city resources, attention, activity on that side of town? And can we figure out how to get me in a place that I can succeed? Because I have to make very big decisions in the next 90 days. And if I don't get some sort of change, it's not a good outcome. That's all I'm saying.
So I sit on the Arts and Culture Commission, and I usually make a point of almost always sitting next to Becky Foster, who is a huge advocate for West Lebanon as well. And I can sense even cross efforts, right? So if you're looking for greenway development and you're advocating for West Lebanon on that front mostly in that development, Becky's the advocate for the arts and is looking for equal or at least fair efforts put forth to West Lebanon as well. So what it's a constituency that that seems to all want to move in the same direction, right? So I recognize that, and I think, well, we are not an official rulemaking board, but what we can do and what we have been trying to do is attend other policy board meetings to kind of say, we're behind this, we're interested in this effort, or we support this effort. That was most recently done at the meeting on the 14th. So if there's something that we can work on together, if you're stepping in front of a board, then please let us know. And it doesn't have to be in a monthly meeting. Sure. It can be a, hey, we're doing this, we could use your support. Tell us a little bit about it and go forward. I've had conversations with a number of the folks around the room. Everybody seems to respect what you're trying to do. And thanks for coming in. I mean, this is what I think I needed to hear. Sure. Not as an individual who has ever opposed to anything you're doing, but I don't have the history with, I don't have it. But I can see the passion and I can see the frustration. And if the points are valid and there's something that we can do concretely to make your pathway easier, then I think we've got some potential to do that. One of the things before we had a split project of either doing Spencer Street or now the lower lots joint with TIF, we talked a lot about what are the rules, what are the regulations that are hanging people up, what is the process? Is it at an individual level? Is it going too deep? Are we focusing on the wrong things? Dan has provided a lot of edit suggestions to various language to make things clearer, or at least to tighten them up a little bit. And I think we as an EDC board can do that, but we also need to hear what is helpful. Yep. So you've got open ears on that one. Appreciate it. We will also make sure that when we do the listening tours, and Tracy's not here today to talk about it, but they're coming up soon. I think she said they were planning on doing two. I'm going to get my months wrong, either 2 in April and 2 in May, or 2 in May and 2 in June, to visit a number of businesses. And the homework assignment for the EDC folks today would be to put together a list of folks that are to be invitees. And, I'll put you on my list.
And I appreciate that. And it's a two-way street, as I said before, and I truly mean that. Like, you guys know where we are. We're right downtown, and I'll take any and all feedback, criticism, input, opportunity, ideas, all of it.
Well, just from an outsider's perspective, again, there's a visual impact that your improvement to that building did in the core downtown of West Lebanon, right? So if we can continue that model down the road or up the road and have other efforts going at the same time, then I think that's important.
Absolutely.
I'd have to revisit a conversation with Tracy, and I don't know if this only applies to TIF districts, but at one point she was talking about a facade grant, which might provide some offsetting capital to businesses to improve the front facade or any sort of outside surface, painting, glass, what have you, to kind of, if it all of a sudden and we can chat this out, if we're doing 40 cents on a dollar, is there a way that the city can find money? And that's a separate conversation. I'm not really on the revenue side, but if there's that creativity can spur local initiative, if Jack, Jill, and Sally all do it, then Betty, Sue, and Rob are going to feel like they should be doing it too, right?
100%. And I work with this group, Proud Places, which is sort of a disparate group of people with for lack of a better term, high give a damn about downtowns, right? And so I follow what they talk about and learn, and we trade examples and everything. And I think that is important. I think the note I will give, and I will just steal it from them, is those are crucial, but you have to solve the pain point of the property owner, right? And so there's two outcomes. There's the hard no, we're not interested. And then there's that sounds hard, no thanks. And I think too often the latter gets dismissed as apathy and disinterest, as opposed to, it may not be their expertise, it may not be their skill set, it may not be in their budget, they may not have a ladder, whatever it is. And so I think there's two ways to propose that, right? Which is you make the investment, fill out this form, go to a committee, seek a reimbursement, versus, hey, for every dollar you're willing to put in, we're willing to put in $1 too, and here's your resources to how to be helpful to do that. And so I think that's the opportunity, because it's easy to dismiss that as lipsticking the pig. And I'm not saying that it's either or. I think that's a critical piece while we're figuring out the big, hairy challenges, right? To say, is that facade and signage what we want to be the first thing people see when they turn the corner, right? So I think it's just compartmentalizing it into, hey, here's the actionable stuff, and hey, maybe we pick a test case that we find a day to just do as case study. Because I think it is, too often that comes off as, hey, here's a homework assignment for a class you didn't ask to enroll in. But I think if we just lower the bar, when I walk up and down the street and talk with people about Christmas lights, it's that oh yeah, we used to do that, we want to, the enthusiasm is there. I just think we have to figure out how to coordinate it and align it. And tap people who are, we have Devin Blanchard, who's really good at lights, just find people who are good at the execution piece, and for short money, engage them to be the tip of the spear and the enthusiastic person.
So while I have you in the chair, I'm just going to ask folks if they have questions directly. We don't get you in too often. You're normally up on the screen. So Kevin, anything for Chet?
I've been part of the West Lebanon committee, so I appreciate Chet and all his work. No, I don't have any questions for Chet.
David?
I have a question. So, I've toured the property. I mean, it's fabulous. And let's say you can't find biotech to come out there, but what are some other options that you've looked at? I've read all all. Yep. I mean, what are some other options for you?
I mean, I personally,
The reason I say that is because, we're building up by the airport,
Yeah.
and so why would you go there if you can go up to the airport?
Understood. I mean, I think to some degree, certainly looking back to 07, 09, when it was formulated, right, is that you do what you know. And Lime, that was Lime's MO, 4 million square feet of it, from when Kendall Square was a vacant parcel. I think I have tried to broaden that into where I think we get into, not just into, med tech in parallel, but just the general innovation economy that exists up here. We clearly have the brain power. And so there's great examples even up in Burlington that tries to make it a little bit broader than that. I think the question that I'll pose to the EDC and pose openly is we took housing, we were asked to take housing out of the proposal back in 09, 10, because we were in the housing crisis. There was all of those concerns, and we subsequently moved housing up further, earlier into the phasing. I still can't do it first, right? I have to do the first building. I'm all ears. There's a degree here, which is we've got water and sewer to the site already. I've got advanced transit willing to come and do the transfer station there to take some pressure off the library. I want to align with the market, obviously. So do I know that there's sufficient, there could be that rock star company that comes out of there and Tuck. The Lime process was to grow with them, which is why it's phased and all that. But I think we need to be adaptive to the market. So if that needs to be more housing, if it needs to be more pure office, I think we've talked a lot with folks about manufacturing. Certainly we got some hard looks at it in the course of everybody ramping up for the COVID effort.
Can I ask one more
Oh, yeah,
question?
please.
So we talk about housing. We've had this conversation before about, there's so much apartments going in, but what we seem to be lacking in Lebanon is the single family homes.
Yep.
And not the ginormous ones, but I'm talking about starter homes is that economically viable
No.
from your point of view?
No.
And why is that?
I'm losing money on every house site that I sell on Crafts Avenue Extension right now.
Really?
When you carry the infrastructure of all that, and then to meet the now, if I could get in my time machine and go back to April 2020, when we were moving that forward, and I decided, no, I don't see meat on the bone to do, we have a problem. I think it's a good problem to have, but we like quality and lead and energy efficiency because I'm an environmental policy guy. The upfrontness, as we all know, is a premium.
Mhm.
I couldn't, even in the crazy hot market today, I don't think I could deliver a net zero. I know I couldn't deliver a net zero unity home plus the pro rata infrastructure on that and sell it in the market with any profit. I'm not even sure I could break even on it. It's a $700,000 outcome in that example. Now, Kevin knows a heck of a lot more about housing than me, so if I'm wrong, tell me.
No,
I think you see it at Rock Ridge, you see it, there's other places that are trying to do that. We have numerous housing partners. We did an experiment with Bequal that blew up, but we've had a housing partner come with us who's ready to go whenever we are on the second phase. It's nationally known and recognized and would love to do it. That's how we do things. I want to be clear, this is not a thing that, I'm our marketing guy, I'm our snowplow guy, we have to partner too. We have to go out and we have to do RFPs, right? To partners to come in, and that's my approach to life. I know what I suck at. Housing is one of those, right? So we go out and find people and architects who are really good at it and try to work with them to get to that. So I'm open to all of it. I've been an open advocate for missing middle housing because I think the challenge is we don't yet have the zoning to accomplish it. But I think for many reasons, we need to re-legalize, if you will, that housing that already exists around our downtown, those multifamilies, the 2 families up to 4 families. I said this when we talked about the action plan, which is that density has this like scariness around it as a word, when in fact it's a really door opening enabling thing. So if you can get that extra piece, if you can do those models, I think that's a place that's really, I mean, I said it to the council, I'll open book a project with you on missing middle as an experiment to try to get there. I have land that we could do. I don't have the zoning for it, right? I tried to navigate a nonconformity. It didn't go anywhere and I lost my partner. But I believe that we need that because I don't want to compete against the big boxes because we've got a lot of those coming online. I think that there's some white space there to compete. I think there's stuff that's take treetops as a typology, right? Where it's a thicker structure, longer term investment, stuff like that. I think that would play. I think that's a missing piece. And I actually think, and I see it from, I live in Norwich where I grew up, but like, I don't think we can build all the single family homes that the market says it wants in a way that the city can financially and municipally support in terms of expansion of services. And I think it would run headfirst into the concerns of the Conservation Commission and others to do that. So I think the challenge that we're having, and we've cut off the missing middle typologies, is we're not seeing the churn in housing that would happen if we gave people a path to not even officially 55 plus, but just gave people that sort of downsizable housing, which I don't think you can really find right now in the Upper Valley. It also happens to be a typology that I think is approachable to young professionals. I call it Toyota Scion housing. I don't know if you know that business case study where the Scion, they spent years and millions designing like the perfect car for 17-year-old boys because it was affordable and you could customize it. And their number one demographic was retirees because it was cheap and you could get a wheelchair in it. So unintended benefit, right? But in fact, your 25 to 33-year-old housing and your 58 to 73-year-old housing looks a lot alike. Maybe there's less stairs in one to a degree. The problem is you just round peg square hole, right? We have zoned out so much of that. I don't need to unpack the reasons why, but like there's not a path to do that because in places where you can, CBD, for example, where you have the ability to do that, it's not the highest and best use and you're competing against the market that wants to do larger scale. In your R1, R2, R3, and correct me if I'm wrong, so much of our stuff is R3 and R2 that I don't have the awareness of the other districts. It just doesn't quite align. And figuring out how to get there. I mean, I've supported Representative Vann's bill last week that lost 167 to 157 about fourplex as a house. I didn't agree wholeheartedly with it. I thought it eliminated local control in a way that I wasn't super comfortable with. But I think all of us are saying like, okay, so how do we do it? What's the path? What's the route? How do we do something like that? Because I don't want to, I mean, I'm not saying it detrimentally at all to the Rock Ridge guys. Like, I don't want to compete against that. They have their piece. The second phase of Brady Sullivan will have that piece. There's plenty of room here for us to all play happily. We just got to figure out how to enable that and how to encourage housing that, like the stuff that was built in the previous era of Lebanon, is high quality and withstands that test of time. And especially with the opportunities that Cliff Below and others have advocated for, we're at a really unique piece with power. And I think that's a real big opportunity. And I dork out about hydropower a lot. But that dam, that's the equivalent of 300 acres of solar panels. So you've got a renewable energy source that's a good damn good dam, sitting right here that the state paid half of back in '49. And Vermont has coordinated to buy their power. We could do the same. Dartmouth can do the same. And that's competitive advantage. That's regional future proofing.
I'm going to continue around the table. Andy? I mean, you fit into that group that's looking
Looking
for
for
that
the,
style house,
yeah.
right? Townhouses
That's
or,
right.
or
That's right, but I can see where he's coming from. It's pretty hard to put something like that, especially if you're trying to go with an energy standpoint. It's hard for a developer to, the ROIs just don't work on those developments, you know? It's tough. There's not an easy, it'd be nice to talk to you further on that, on how you
Anytime.
get it to someday to be like that. As a developer standpoint, how do you get it to be where you can start single-family homes? But I commend you on all the work you've done so far on getting this thing. I think it looks great. I'm new to this committee, but, you know, I don't see a single thing there that's doesn't align with what I would have thought all of West Leb would have liked. And it seems like you've really done your legwork. But what right now is your biggest holdup from this city? What hurdle is the city right now putting in front of you that is making it? I know how the city works, and I can understand that from a developer standpoint, it's got to be very frustrating. What right now is the big hurdle, other than the workforce? And
I owe Sean a presentation that's been sitting on my desk, but for one appendix, because I can't find anybody in 3 states to quote me on stuff. So I'll get it to you incomplete if I have to, but to basically say, hey, here's my perspective. I'm open for the conversation. I think the critical thing is the amount of upfront carry for me in terms of, I'm staring at $3 million of infrastructure right now that if I can't put debt really on it. So I just got to figure out how to lower that bar so I can get to vertical growth that's 34% more expensive than it was 5 years ago. So I'm just trying to balance all that to get to, because like when I go out to partners and talk with that and they say, well, I mean, Dartmouth just offered me dirt for free, right? I don't want to carry any infrastructure, and I don't have to because Salem will say yes, or Hanover will say no, but someone else will say yes. I just have to get to a place where I can get the capital markets, because remember, every time the mobilization blows up, I lose tenants, as I've lost 3 times. I lose the bank. I lose equity partners, I lose housing, I lose engineers, I lose all that. So that's the tipping point for me. I got to staff up. I got to take on all this risk. And right now I got to reset the table a little bit to do so in a way that I can justify to people that are on my team.
so it's not so much a city hurdle of like getting through zoning and stuff like that. That's all been passed.
I'm approved.
Yeah.
I have my entitlements. I think there's pieces of it. So the history, for those who don't know it, we got the zoning change. There was a push to rezone it. We rushed to file everything within 90 days to protect it. There's stuff in there that's ugly. There's stuff in there that we need to amend and address. There's plenty of stuff, and I think it's just a matter of turning a new leaf, collaborative effort to figure out what it takes. Because I think, as Sean has said, it's the West Lebanon economic development opportunity we see right now.
Right.
I want to start paying you guys taxes for buildings. I don't want to keep paying taxes for dirt. Because I want to see that go towards the Greenway in Westboro that's not on the existing taxpayer. It's a great question. I'm not prepared to answer it, and I'm happy to provide more specific.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Daniel,
Where is that?
It's a little part of Cambridge.
Okay, so it's not local.
It's not local. It is East Cambridge. It is the Platinum Lead building was there. So Kendall Square was the former manufacturing sector of East Cambridge, historically Portuguese American neighborhood that was raised in the 70s for NASA, actually. And then when Kennedy got shot, Johnson put it in Houston, and Cambridge said, oh my God, what do? We just knocked all these buildings down. And they went to MIT, and MIT said, well, we're trying to sequence the genome. And if you guys would just give us clear rules on how to do biotechnology research. And Cambridge said, yes. And that's why the center of gravity for life science is not in New Jersey with the pharmaceuticals, it's in Cambridge, because Cambridge set the first rules to allow that research. And now it's the most productive square mile in America, intellectually and tax revenue wise. Yep.
Appreciate all the stuff online. Those are good links. I went through that. I gotta go through.
Yeah, not to cut off the party, but we just lost our quorum, so
Oh,
Kevin Purcell leaving.
got it.
Just,
Got it.
I mean, we can continue to talk, but I was
Sure.
gonna,
So do you or Sean have questions while we have
I
Chet
do.
here? Oh.
I just want to ask one thing. I just want to make sure, because you asked the question, what is it the city's not doing that you need? 'Cause I just want to be clear, when we worked with the state, we included your lot as one of the ones we wanted to market. So that was done initially, because we looked at across the city, there were 3 different locations, as you know, 'cause you went on the visit with us. One was our airport tech park, one was your location, and the pad sites that were up off where the Hilton is. So I just want to make sure we all understand that we have an interest in marketing that, and we did that. Then you came to a subsequent meeting after that. And then 2, we talked about a TIF district, which I know you're still working on, so that you can do exactly what we did up at the airport, where the city would pay for the infrastructure, and you're going to guarantee the city's going to get paid back those roadways to help you do that. So I just want to make sure if there's anything else, you've got all your approvals. I just want to make sure if there's anything else that the city needs, we're clear about that, because the way you kind of left it, there's something else that the city quite hasn't done that would help you get to where you need to be, because we want you to be where you need to be, because that's in our interest as well. I want to make sure if there is anything, let us know what that is, and if you can tell us now, that would be good.
No, we had a great conversation, you and I, last summer. We talked about it in the fall. The response was we get through budget season. I just can't get the last thing. I'll send you what I have. And I think my goal is to lay out the cohesive everything, right? Get us on a path to do that. As I know, all of the ticking time clocks and different things. And so we got to figure out how to balance that against, my April start is now a July start, all that piece of it. So I'm not trying to, I'm not playing the blame game at all. I'm saying water on the bridge. I'm saying this is how we need to get there. And to the point about the 30,000 foot opportunity in West Lebanon, the purpose of today, trailer-oriented development, I think it's just a matter of, we got wood to chop. And I'll send you everything that I have, and I look forward to working with you to get there.
So right now, there's nothing else other than when you're going to provide that to me, because we talked about that a while ago. There's nothing else that you need from the city that the city's not providing you to help your project move forward.
There is the conversation around TIF. There's things that I can advance as a private developer and propose to you. I don't know the inner workings of how that works, and I will follow your lead to get there. I know it needs to go to the council. I know all of that, that it is a process. My understanding is that I owe you an updated proposal, and you'll then give me, and if the city wants to pay for the work, I'm all for it. We talked about what we would carry, what we would put in escrow to pay. Like, I think we can work that out. I think it's just the matter of how do we get there? Now, I've worked on TIF-enabled projects in Massachusetts, but in that capacity, it was the city saying, here's what it is, here's your role in it. So I'll happily put stuff on paper to try to advance things, but I think it's just the question of, okay, what are those next steps? And then what's feasible for me to do as a private side developer? Because same thing with we've raised this before, like funding for advanced transit for an intermodal station, I'm precluded from applying because I'm not city accepted streets, right? So we can put to the council, will you consider taking the streets to qualify for that? Little things like that. So I'll send you, here's actionable things that we can do. So there are things that we've talked about that the city can do.
That, but, and you guys can do well to us, but other than that though, you've done everything you've asked us to do. You have all the approvals you need. So there's nothing that I owe you, the city owes you, that's holding you up. I just want to be clear about that. If there is, I just need to know what it is. I know you've got some things need to send to me so we can do the TIP and get that in front of the council for consideration. But I don't have that yet. So there's nothing that we're doing that's holding you up right now. I just want to be clear about that.
I wasn't intending to say that. I was intending to explain what's transpired. Try to talk about what we're trying to do. I've been trying to pull that all together while also carrying other projects not in Lebanon. So
I get it.
we're all there. We're on the same page.
Perfect. And thanks for clarifying that point, and thank you, Sean, for bringing that up. David, was there a question online? I'm just going to, before that, we're taking that, I'm just going to state that we're already 10 over, and I know David has to run as well. This is an interesting topic. It's not meant to go on all day. So if whoever has a question, I don't know if it's one or two, if they could limit it to 30 seconds and Chad, maybe you could answer as quickly,
Yeah.
if it's in your
Yeah.
direction.
Becky Foster, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, so I was at the first meeting when River Park met. We had just moved to West Lebanon when that happened. And I don't know about all the politics that have gone on, but for the last 15 years, the citizens of West Lebanon have worked, met, voted, meetings, talking, etc., to get River Park up and going, because we feel River Park is critical to the city having the money to improve downtown West Lebanon. And the two, to me, are very important to each other. And we are promised high-tech river access, park-like property, and daily business coming to that area. And to me, that's really important. If you are looking at low income or middle, even lower income single houses, that is not ever what we were talking about. It's totally different than what we were told all these 15 years. And we have sat here in West Lebanon for 15 years watching White River Junction build the 2 new buildings by the lake. I was told yesterday that one company was going to move to West Lebanon and they had to go over there because they couldn't get the land in West Leb. I was told that Tucker Box was going to move to West Lebanon, and all of it's in White River Junction because we couldn't get it done in West Leb. And this is a really big deal to West Lebanon people. We've always felt, and I've told everybody knows how I feel about this, that we're not getting our share of the attention that Lebanon is getting, based on we're paying probably equally as much on our property taxes as they are. And that's all we're asking for. Let this thing go. I don't know what David owes, what the holdup is, but for the last 2 years, we've been hoping to see ground broken on that front building, and for some reason it hasn't. And let's just get going, because it's holding. I tell you, it's so frustrating for people in West Lebanon now. The frustration level is very high. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Becky. And once again,
Yep.
I do enjoy sitting next to you at Arts and Culture and hearing your passion for West Lebanon. So
Yep.
we're going to get there. Once again, this is not a policy board. We're simply here to try to work to make the process smoother with other committees and such, and get done the things that you folks want to see done.
And I just want the newer people who haven't been through this process the last 15 years to know this has been a long, drawn out thing, and everyone is very frustrated. And like Chet said, and like his dad before, we've been at many meetings and voiced our concern, and we just feel like nothing's happening. I don't know behind the scenes what's happening, but anyway, enough said.
Thank you, Becky. And,
Yep.
and with that, as chair, I'm going to adjourn the meeting 15 minutes late. Thanks for those who stuck around. I appreciate it. Thank you, David. Next meeting is on thank you, Chet. It's nice to have you in person. So thank you
for having me. Appreciate it.
Maybe I could grab you in the hallway for a second. April 22nd. Thank you, folks. 27. Thank you.
I've never seen a bill done meeting go over.
I know, but you're my